Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of Fearless Flight Live with the first team here, Dieter and Eric and myself, Capt Ron. We're glad to have you. If you're watching for the first time, welcome. If you're watching for the multiple times, welcome too. Just keep coming.
Flight Attendant Diane will not appear tonight because she's having her office painted and has plastic over everything in the office, including her computer, which may or may not be in there. But yeah,
reminds me of the Lucy and Ethel episode in I Love Lucy, where they wallpaper Ethel's apartment and Lucy gets covered by the wallpaper. So
that's kind of the situation she's in.
Yeah.
Let's hope that does not happen to Flight Attendant Diane.
So Eric, first of all, welcome to the show. This is, of course, the place where you go if you have a fear of flying, if you know somebody you have a fear of flying, or you just want to talk about airplanes and what it's like being out there in the industry. Got a couple of little things here tonight. Going to talk about a success story that started with a 15-minute coaching call last week, and I got a little piece on anxiety we'll talk about, and then of course we're going to remind you about the show. We got people signing up for the 301 class in Burbank. We haven't been pushing the Phoenix one, but it's right behind there on November 9th. Burbank is going to be October 25th with the live show or the live prep at the Air Hollywood Studios in Valencia. And then the next day we will fly from Burbank to Sacramento and back. We just had 2 people sign up in the last 20 minutes here. So get them while they're hot, as they say. And then I got a little piece on anxiety to go along with our story tonight, our success story. Just comes to mind here. Eric and I were talking about there was something in the news about a Frontier airplane that had some kind of a problem, Eric. And anyway, so I just want to throw out, and maybe Dieter can put it in the notes, that if you heard about something in the news with an airplane having a problem or something like that, we're just kind of surveying how much attention do you pay to things like that in the news, incidents and things like that. And we're not even going to talk about it necessarily. Eric might cover it next week on the crew edition, but we want to just kind of get a feel for how in touch you people are with incidents like that versus what we think when we see them out there. So let me throw the title slide up here on the on our show. Whoops, I'm gonna sneak back to. Okay, we'll just kind of recap it here. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Fearless Flight Live, and I'm Captain Ron, along with Captain Eric and First Officer, Technical Officer Dieter. We always mention our Facebook group, Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather, and it's a great way to connect with people who really get you. That is other fearful flyers. And we just had a coaching call today with someone, and love her husband as she does. He just doesn't get it, and it's really tough, and all of you know that. So the Birds of a Feather membership site is it's a soft place to land, and I get lots of people who do coaching calls that tell me that was one of the first places that they felt welcome at. So join it if you're not a member, and spread the word for other people out there. I got a little piece on how to train your mind away from anxiety. I'm going to start with a success story. We'll talk about the Air Hollywood class in detail, and take questions and comments as always. We want to first mention, of course, we have our Fearless Flight monthly live coaching webinar coming up on October 17th. And then we do an encore presentation 2 days after that on Saturday morning. There's the link. We'll have that in the notes. I created a little slide here to go along with it. So remember, this is the theme is going to be how to discover what your next step is, because that's the most difficult thing about what you're doing out there. There we go. That's about the way it is if you're a fearful flyer. It takes a little bit of thinking and a lot of momentum to get you going sometimes. And even I forget that when people come on and talk to me, and particularly in the 15-minute coaching session, I don't want to sound like a used car salesman, but sometimes I soft sell too much, and what they really want, people want to know what you do next. And so we're going to focus on that on Thursday, October 17th, and then again on Saturday the 19th. Let
Ron,
me,
speaking
yeah,
of
go ahead.
focus, Helene just put in chat that she watches the news, especially if it pertains to a plane or a flight. So thanks, Helene. I appreciate the comment. My question back to you and anybody who is watching the news, what does that usually bring up for you? Because that's really part of why we're asking that particular question. So what are you noticing? What feelings,
Yeah, and
thoughts, what
specifically, if you
sensations?
can, put down what story do you tell yourself? You
Mhm.
say that can happen to me, or that's another thing to worry about. We want to hear the narrative that goes on in your mind, because that's what you're charged with changing. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So last Thursday, I had a Fearful Flyer. We'd never spoken before. She did a 15-minute coaching session, and she was getting ready for a trip. She flies rarely. It's getting worse over the years. And she had a trip from up in the West in Idaho down to LA, and then she was catching a big bird on the way over to London. It's like mixed emotions, which I heard defined once as like watching your mother-in-law drive over a cliff in your new Cadillac. And she was just really excited about flying, but she just going to England, but she just was all hot and bothered about the fact that it involved getting there on an airplane. And so we did a little talking. I went a little bit over, as some of you have done 15-minute coaching calls with me, and so we got her to the point where she was comfortable, at least continuing to think about that. And because she had to fly in just a little over 24 hours, where she had to start the flights. And then as I invite any of you, if you need to, she engaged me then over the course of the next couple of days on in chat. And one of the things we know Maureen got done with the call, she was preparing the next day, and there's a really big fire up in the Boise area where she lives. And even though it didn't affect her or anything, she found that added to her anxiety. Not surprising. That's what anxiety does. It worries you about things that even aren't relevant to where you're at with that. And then she apologized to me for being distracted. There's no apology required. That is what anxiety does to us. And so I asked her, I said, can you identify any particular thoughts or cognitions related to the fire? Like, I wonder if this will affect my house. Can the smoke reduce the visibility of the airplane? In other words, was there any tangible attachments or relevancies to the fire, and either flying or just her general anxious nature, which is what we just asked, or just what Dieter and I just suggested, is make sure you try to note any stories that you find yourself telling yourself about that. And she said no, she's okay with that, but she just wasn't really sure why it was bothering her. Well, again, anxiety, it doesn't have any enemies. It just gloms on everything around there. So she got on there and she talked to the pilots. She said that was a really helpful experience. And the pilots said there'd be a few bumps. And I joked with her. I said, tell them to keep it on the road. And that caused a little bit of humor, which is always good if you can do it. And she's with me right there. They're closing the doors. And she switched over to the harmonizer. And I don't know, we've been talking about this thing for 20 plus years, but the harmonizer is what I call a dynamic meditation that helps more people than not get on the airplane and stay on the airplane. And she was there. She commented as she was still waiting for takeoff. a lot of planes coming in, and there were even some of the fire bombers that were going by, landing at the airport. I'm sure they were getting serviced up there. And we continued to talk on and off over the next 8 hours or so, and she finally got to London, and needless to say, she was happy as a clam. And I just want to offer this little bit because we talk so much about people having problems and the anxiety. It's going to come, it's going to go. The most important thing you can do is stick with it and don't give up. You just have to hang in there, and you can do it. And people used to ask me, can I get to the point where it's not bothersome for me at all, or where I just can tolerate it? I used to accept that. Now I'm telling you, you can get way beyond that. You can get to where you really enjoy flying, and where it becomes a non-event, where you don't think about the airplane so much. So let's just use our person, my fearful flyer that I just did the coaching session, who just landed in London yesterday. Use that as inspiration, as an example, because you sure can accomplish your goals. Okay. There's a fellow that I follow out here called, let me see if I can get him up on the screen here. Come on. There we get rid of our friend. This is a guy that I've heard him on a podcast 4 or 5 years ago. His name is Dr. Judson Brewer, and this is a book, one of his, I think it's his latest book, called Unwinding Anxiety. Not related specifically to fear of flying, but definitely relevant to that. And he highly recommends mindfulness as a way to reduce anxiety, and he has 3 steps here. So I thought I'd just share these highlights that he has. And he's one of the leading experts out there on unwinding anxiety, hence the title to his book there. And so I thought we'd talk about that. I want to make a distinction up front there about the difference between anxiety and fear. Fear is an immediate and real response to a threat. Anxiety is processed in the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. So that's what causes the rumination, otherwise known as anticipatory anxiety. It's basically due to lacking information. So that's why the first step in our Fearless Flight method is to educate yourself about flying, about psychology of fear, and about airplanes, and about the system. And because when you know more, you do better. And that's important to do that. And like I said, the PFC is up here. It's one of the more recent parts of the brain in evolutionary history. And that's its job, is to alert you to things that aren't necessarily, or that are dangerous, but it throws in there the ones that aren't as well. You know, and some of you who are enrolled in the 201, or you've been to any of our lectures, you might remember that I use the example of being on a camping trip, and you open your tent flap and there's a bear staring you in the face. That's fear, real and present danger, and you got to do something to get yourself away and stay safe. And and once you do that and you go home after the weekend, and now what happens is you have these nightmares and these what ifs all manner of the day, and that's called anxiety. So it's what's left over after you, in this case, survive a real threat. And the brain doesn't make a distinction between real or imagined threats. It sounds the warning for both. And so you have to use your logical part of your brain, the same part of the brain that triggers that rumination and anticipatory anxiety. The prefrontal cortex is the same place you get a solution, but you gotta arm it with some knowledge. Understanding habit loops. This is what happens when anxiety takes over, and you engage in behaviors like over planning or distraction to cope, reinforcing the cycle of anxiety. Mostly what you do over and over is relive the anxiety or the fearful thoughts. And so step 1 is to become aware of those habit loops. And we talk about identifying triggers, and I use the terminology, making sure that you can analyze the story that you're telling yourself, because the ultimate resolution is going to be when you learn how to build a counter story to the one that's causing you the anxiety. And it's okay to realize that anxiety is a coping mechanism, but it's not, it doesn't necessarily address the real issue, and it isn't what's successful in the long term. Mindfulness is how we can become awareness to these loops that we get in. And what does mindfulness mean? It doesn't mean calming your mind necessarily. It doesn't mean putting all these thoughts out. In fact, and in contrast, mindfulness is about paying attention to where your attention is. That's the first thing, because anxiety or flight anxiety is an attention disorder, in that once your mind gets triggered, your attention gets hijacked, and now you can't get it back under your control. And the resolution to any kind of anxiety, particularly flight anxiety, is learning how to deal with the reality and bring yourself into the present moment where you can process it. Step 2, focus on the negative. And now this may sound misleading at first. We're not talking about focusing on the obsessive compulsive negative loop. What we're talking about is stepping back a little bit and maintaining your awareness that these are just thoughts. And when you make yourself aware, like, there it is again. I'm sitting here worried about the turbulence that we're going to experience today, or all manner of things that you worry about as a fearful flyer. The awareness that in the moment, it's just a thought. It doesn't have anything to do with reality necessarily. All right. So focusing on the negative is a way to cope with and keep yourself separate from the anxiety triggers. Step 3, find a bigger, better option. So the goal here is to replace these anxiety-driven behaviors with mindfulness and curiosity. And what is mindfulness? Well, one way that you've heard me talk about is actionable steps. For example, if I'm sitting there and I'm starting to notice that I'm worried about a panic attack, one of the things that you can do is you can get your iPhone out, or your Android, go to the stopwatch function, start the clock, and use it to regulate your breathing, such that you breathe in for 4 seconds and out for 6. In for 4 and out for 6. This takes advantage of something called heart rate variability breathing. And research has shown that is the quickest way to reharmonize, put back in balance your sympathetic nervous system with your parasympathetic nervous system. Get the accelerator and the brake on your car back in harmony, so that they're not both being activated at the same time. Okay. And then when you focus on your breath or body sensations, you can find when you calm down a little bit, that'll lead you back to cognitive resources, so you can come up with other things like watching a movie, or reading a book, or listening to an audio program of some sort, so where you can get back. The trouble with most of us is when we are in this first stage of overcoming our anxiety, no amount of meditation and mindfulness is going to help you practicing in advance, because when you get in the situation, it kind of disappears like vapor, and you can't think clearly. So that's why I recommend the Flight Harmonizer, or some other audio program where things are pre-constructed, so that you can rely on that and you don't have to think of creating the words that you need by yourself. And then to kind of summarize this, we want to pull it all together by again talking about mindfulness is the foundation of all this. Mindfulness is just thinking about your attention and paying attention to where it's at. It underpins all 3 of the steps that I just went over that were raised by Judd Brewer, and it helps you realize that and recognize that anxiety-driven behaviors. Or it helps you recognize anxiety-driven behaviors and experience them fully, not avoiding them. You can't avoid them. They're too powerful. And then provide fulfilling alternatives. And a great way to do this is to join our Clear for Takeoff 201 online course and take advantage of the special offer, which is coming up. Let me say a quick word here about the 301 flight again. Eric was going to try to see if he could pull up the current fares on Southwest. I don't know if he's still with us. Did you find it?
There, and I found them. So they're creeping up. They're $170 for each leg.
Okay.
So they're not out of sight. That'll sting a little. But if you come with us, that's not out of control, and you succeed, your victory will be your victory. That'll seem like nothing compared to your victory of coming with us. So they're not out of sight yet, but they aren't going to go back down. It doesn't look like.
And if you're a Costco member, like I am, you would have received another bonus today. They routinely offer Southwest vouchers. And the voucher is normally $500 worth of voucher for $450. But occasionally, like today, I think over the next 2 days they're having a sale, you can get that same $500 voucher for $430, basically. So you can save, what is that, times 2, 60, 30%? Is that what it amounts to? My math isn't working right now, too much pressure, but anyway, but it's a good deal. You can,
I was just going to say, it's a good deal. Get it.
Yeah. So, so if you bought one of those vouchers, let's assume that you're not just planning to fly once in your life, which would be with us, but you could use that. You could buy that voucher for the class, get the tickets, use up $340 worth of it, but at effectively a 60% discount or 30% discount. And so look for things out there. But anyway, we want you to go with us if you can, if you're going to be anywhere near that. And I am going to have at least one special webinar that I haven't told any of the guys here. We're going to do that. I'm going to get, when we get a couple more people signed up, I'm just going to invite people to come, and we'll get to know each other a little bit ahead of time. We'll talk about how to use the resources, how to use the course if you signed up for the 201 course, and how to prepare for this beyond that. It's a fun class, and as you know, we're also offering the opportunity, if you're not flying with us, you can either come and watch experience the prep live in Burbank, actually in Valencia, at the Air Hollywood Studios, or you can spend $97 and you can watch a live streaming event of it as well. It's a great way to feel the realism and the reality of people who are getting ready to fly, listen to their stories and how they're going to cope. And so we encourage all of you to do that. This is the offer. If you recall, it's $497. However, if you take or $97 for the live stream, $497 for the class, unless you have purchased one of our packages, and then you get a $200 coupon for that. And if you haven't, that offer, we're going to send that offer out again tonight. Or we just made a new video to promote it, and take a look at that, and you'll see how you can get not only the Clear for Takeoff 201 course, you'll get the 2 months of the Fearless Flyer Club, including, if you sign up right away, including the one coming up at on the 17th of this month. You'll get the Fearless Flight Kit, which is a $200 deal all by itself, and you'll get the $200 coupon. So this drops that down to $297 instead of $497. All right. Anything else that I've missed, you guys?
No, other than honestly, if you live anywhere close to Los Angeles area, we've had people drive literally for days to get there. This is really the class that if there's ever one class you wanna participate in, this is the class. And I know I just watched an older video with one of our friends, Gary. Gary actually didn't have a ticket, but came with us to the airport, and
woe is me. He was so disappointed
He
And
was.
that's the case. So if you're one of those people that just wants to come and dip your toe in the water and watch the prep, don't be surprised if you think, oh man, I wish I'd have bought a ticket. We have that happen all the time where people say that. We have people that when we used to do the classes live, they'd come to the class and then they wouldn't go on the flight. They'd come back to support people and they come back and they say, man, I wish I would have flown today. You
But to
won't.
Gary's credit, he did come back and he did fly.
Yeah, he did.
So,
Yeah, he did.
so that's just honestly, this is really the class where you want to be. And lastly, we had a question about that incident. Eric, can you say a little bit?
Well, more details will get fleshed out later, and this really wasn't report. I mean, we make fun of aviation reporting sometimes, but this really wasn't the reporting fault. I checked a lot of sources. There was a Frontier flight, an Airbus 321 flying from Seattle to San Diego, and they declared an emergency. They had smoke in the cockpit, which is an emergency, and the pilots handled that fine, and they diverted to Las Vegas International. And in the process of the diversion and landing, some time on the rollout, the right engine started on fire. I think on the landing rollout, and they also fought that from the cockpit, but fortunately they had the fire truck standing by anyway, and they were able to put out the fire. They did do an evacuation out there in the runway when the airplane was stopped, and nobody was hurt. However, the cause for the engine fire is unknown, and the cause for the smoke in the cockpit is unknown at the present time, and we'll sure report back when we hear about it. And it could have been that the engine was in trouble to start with, and that's how the smoke was getting ingested into the cockpit, because that's kind of weird to have a burst into flames there, just under general principles on the landing rollout. But that's all the reporting we've been able to get so far. However, everybody got out. Nobody was hurt, and the fire was extinguished on the runway.
So that's what I call a slow news day incident. Because if there were any other normal day, we'd have had 10 things that would have overridden that. And 30 years ago, you would not even have known about that because it would not have hit the information waves, and literally you wouldn't have known about it. And that's the era that we live in. And when I started my career, you could pretty much have an average career and never make the newspapers on even the back page. By the time I got done, we used to joke, now, the most you can hope for is only make the side panel of the USA Today when we still had newspapers that people purchased in hand, as opposed to a headline there. And that's just the nature of where it's good because information gets disseminated. It's bad because it's too easily ends up, I don't like the term fake news, but it's news that is prematurely reported in some cases. So any stories you have, keep sending them to us unless you want to sit there and fret and worry about it yourself for a while. But we'll be the people that can tell you how to separate the wheat from the chaff on stories like that. No reason to.
Right. Or it's correctly reported, but it's just a non-event.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a non-event, they are. So, okay. We're glad to have you all with us again. Thanks for showing up this week again. And remember, if you want to get over your fear of flying, the number one thing you need is an action. You need to take action to do something. We really appreciate it if you come to us. And even bigger, you need to be persistent. Don't give up. And we've seen that time and again. If you have the ability to be in Burbank on October 25th and 6th, we'd love to see you out there. November 9th, if you live anywhere in the Phoenix area or will be in the Phoenix area. And otherwise, sign up, take a look for the offer that's going to come out tonight or tomorrow, whenever we get the final tweaks on the special offer, and take advantage of it. You're going to save over $600 on this. Okay. So thanks, Dieter. Thanks, Eric. Oh,
Ron will be in Burbank. I'll be in Burbank. Flight Attendant Diane will be in Burbank for sure. And we're hoping Chief Technical Officer Dieter will be in Burbank. We just don't know yet. He has to come a lot farther to get out here. He has to come from Toronto, so it requires some effort. But at least the three of us will be there.
Yep, we will.
All right. Well, I'll plan to be there as well because, like I said, this is the one class where you don't want to miss. And that's partially just because there is just no other class in the world where
Yep.
you get to walk into a bona fide aviation themed movie studio, and every class we have people that sit in a warehouse in a mock-up, and at
And
some
ask
point,
us to promise we won't make it take off. I'm not kidding
exactly.
you. Yeah. And if the live stream is directly dependent upon Dieter's presence, I can
Yes.
guarantee that. So we're emotionally invested in getting him out there. So anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great week, and appreciate your patience and persistence. Come back and see us.